Okay guys, today we are going to get into retail pricing, chapter 13, so we've got 13 through 17 to go. I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in. Now noticing that I should probably stop wearing black on days that I'm going to film this. Looks like I have like a floating head sometimes. Anyways, pricing decisions, super important, and the importance of pricing decisions is actually growing because today's customers have a lot more alternatives for where they can get their products or services. Value is a big component of pricing, and that's the ratio of what customers receive, so the perceived benefit of the products and services offered by the retailer, to what they pay for it. So value is actually a function of the perceived value over, or the perceived benefits over price. Retailers can increase the value and stimulate more sales by either increasing the perceived benefits or reducing the price. So the top half of that function goes up, or the bottom half of that function goes down in order to increase the value of a product or service. If retailers set prices too low, though, their sales might increase, but the profits might decrease due to a lower profit margin. In addition, retailers need to consider the value proposition that they're offering and how that compares to the value proposition offered by their competitors, as well as legal restrictions that are related to pricing. So we're going to get into all of that in the next few slides. So retailers use two basic retail pricing strategies: high-low pricing and everyday low pricing, which I'm sure you guys have heard of before. If you've ever seen a Walmart commercial, you've heard about everyday low prices. High-low pricing is a strategy in which retailers frequently, sometimes as often as weekly, discount the initial prices for merchandise through sales promotions. The strategy is in response to competitive moves and to the positive response from value-conscious consumers. Everyday low pricing is a strategy in which the retail prices are at a level that's somewhere between the regular non-sale price and the deep discount sale price of the retailer's competitors. EDLP does not necessarily mean the lowest price in the market. It just means that the price resides, again, somewhere between the non-sale price and the deep discount sale price. A more accurate description of EDLP is everyday same prices, because the prices don't have significant fluctuations. Some retailers have adopted a low price guarantee policy in which they guarantee that their products will be offered at the lowest possible price for either one single product or a group of products. The guarantee usually promises to match or better any lower price found in the local market, and might include a provision to refund the difference between the seller's offer price and the lower price if somebody has already purchased a product. So there are some advantages to both pricing strategies. The advantage to high-low pricing is that you are increasing profits through price discrimination. You are having sales, so you're constantly sort of discounting your prices, so you've got sales that are creating excitement. And you're also allowing retailers to sell slow-moving merchandise by just kind of gradually bringing the price of that merchandise down. The advantages of EDLP: customers are always sure that they're going to get a low price, so it's consistency and assurance for the customers. It also reduces advertising and operating expenses because you don't have to keep marketing these price reductions. And it also reduces stockouts and improves inventory management because you're selling at the same price all the time, so it's easier to calculate your industry calculations. Sorry, your inventory calculations. So this is just a graphical representation of the different pricing strategies. So the retailer over here is using a high-low pricing strategy where they'll price a product at one price and then they will mark it down 50% for a sale. The retailer on the right, I don't know if you guys recognize this retailer at all, but it's got this everyday low price right here, and they are using the EDLP strategy where all of the products are marked down all of the time. Okay. So retailers consider 5 factors when they're setting retail prices. The first is the price sensitivity of the consumer. The second is competition. The third is the pricing of services, which are priced differently than products. Fourth is analytical factors such as cost, break-even points, pricing software, and the internet, mobile and social media use. And the fifth is those legal and ethical issues. So when we're talking about customer price sensitivity, we find that as the price of a product increases, the sales for the product will decrease because fewer and fewer customers feel that the product is a good value. So the higher the price gets, the less willing customers are often willing to pay for it because they feel like maybe as the price goes up, they're not getting enough value to justify paying that higher price. So the price sensitivity of customers will determine how many units will be sold at different price levels. So one approach to this, or one approach that can be used to measure the price sensitivity, is a price experiment. So this is kind of this is a table that shows data from a price experiment. So this is looking at 6 different restaurants, and it's looking at a specific product and how many units of that product are sold at a certain price. So you'll notice that when whatever they're selling at this restaurant is priced at $6, 9,500 people will purchase it, and they will have a revenue of $57,012. When you take away the costs, the variable costs and the fixed costs, you have $1,500 in profit. So you would think, logically speaking, that if you were to raise the price by $2.50, that you would get quite a bit more revenue and quite a bit more profit. But the fact of the matter is that people who would buy French fries for $6 per unit don't necessarily feel like paying $8.50 per unit. So when 9,500 people would purchase fries up here, only 2,121 people will buy them at $8.50. You're making a revenue of $18,000 instead of $57,000. When you take out your costs, you're actually in the whole $577. So pricing, there's a really fine line in order to achieve a profit. So this is just a graph that shows the quantity of a specific item when it's sold at different prices. So we saw that when it was priced at $6, we were selling about 9,500 of that specific item, whether it be French fries or bloomin' onions or God knows what. But as the price went up, the quantity sold went down. So this is showing the profit at different prices, and this is actually a really useful graph because you can see where your profit is maximized and then where it starts to go down. So this point right here at which the profit is maximized, so it looks like maybe right around $7. This is showing where you can earn the most profit. So if we were to go back, $7 right here, it's highlighted. Sorry about that. It's highlighted. So that's actually where you're making not as much revenue, but when it comes to cost, you're actually making your most profit. Sorry, I'm right in the way. You're actually making the most profit when you're selling the French fries or the bloomin' onions or the brownie sundae at $2,700 or at $7 per unit. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. These graphs are just really good tools to be able to sort of visualize those price fluctuations. So price elasticity is a commonly used measure of price sensitivity. Price elasticity is just the percentage change in quantity sold divided by the percentage change in price. So elasticity is the percentage change in quantity sold divided by the percentage change in price. The target market for a product is considered price insensitive or inelastic when its price elasticity is greater than -1. The target market for a product is considered price sensitive or elastic when price elasticity is less than -1. So a number of factors affect the price sensitivity for a product. The more substitutes a product or service has, the more likely it is to be price elastic. So if people have a lot of different options, pricing is typically very sensitive and it can fluctuate quite a bit. If there aren't as many options, prices are pretty inelastic or pretty fixed at a certain point. Products and services that are necessities are very inelastic. So when somebody has to have something like gas, we are not going to see a lot of different options as far as pricing goes for gas around town. It's all going to be about the same. Products that are expensive relative to the consumer's income are price elastic. So profit maximizing prices are equal to the price elasticity multiplied the cost divided by price elasticity plus 1. So retailers can price above, below, or at parity with the competition. The chosen pricing policy must be consistent with the retailer's overall strategy and its relative market position. So if you are positioned in sort of a low price or everyday low price market, your pricing strategy doesn't want to be like pricing for luxury goods. Most retailers routinely collect price data about their competitors to see if they need to adjust their prices or if they can keep them the same in order to remain competitive. Pricing of services is a little bit different, like I mentioned. There are some additional issues that you need to consider when you're pricing services versus pricing products, including the need to match supply and demand and the difficulties that customers have in determining service quality. So since services are something that are intangible, you can't see them, hold them, etc., it's really difficult to determine the quality. So if you're paying somebody to clean your house, if somebody does a really, really bad job and somebody does a really, really good job, then obviously you can tell the difference between the service. But sometimes you can't really tell the difference between somebody who does a pretty good job and somebody who does a good job. So pretty good versus good. I don't know, is it worth $10 difference, you know? So services are more difficult to price and it's more difficult to measure the quality. Services are intangible, so again, they can't be inventoried. But most services do have a limited capacity, so there's only so many houses that a house cleaner can clean every single day. But due to the intangibility of services, again, it's really difficult to assess quality. And another factor that increases the dependence on price as a quality indicator is the risk associated with a service purchase. So the price really serves as a cue for customers to determining the quality of a service. So, girls, how many of you have gone to get a haircut? You know, if you're paying $10 for a haircut versus $200 for a haircut, the price is kind of a cue regarding the quality of that haircut. One way or the other, we're losing a couple inches of hair. But there might be indicators in the price that talk about the experience, the expertise of the person cutting your hair, the quality of you know, the coloring they're going to use if you're getting your hair colored. So services are dependent on their price because price serves as a cue for those types of sales. So many retailers will actually set prices by marking up the item's cost to yield a profit, a profitable gross margin. Then this initial price is adjusted on the basic insights of customer price sensitivity and competitive pricing. When setting prices based on merchandise cost, retailers start with a specific equation, which means that they look at the function of retail price being equal to the cost of the merchandise plus the merchandise markup. The markup is the difference between the retail price and the cost of an item. So if it costs a retailer $10 to purchase a bottle of wine, they might sell it for $25, and there might be a $15 markup. Wine is one of the products that is most highly marked up, especially in a restaurant setting. So the differential between the acquisition price and the sale price is the markup. The markup percentage is the markup just represented as a percentage of the retail price. The retail price based on the cost and the markup percentage is a function of the cost of the merchandise over 1 minus the markup percentage. I'm not going to ask you guys to memorize all of these equations. It just shows how markup and pricing relate to one another. Traditionally speaking, apparel retailers use a 50% markup, which generally means that if you're paying $40 for a shirt, the retailer actually purchased that shirt for $20. This is a strategy known as keystoning. So basically what that means is that the retailer just sets the price by doubling the cost of acquiring a product. Retailers rarely sell any or all of their rarely sell all items at the initial price that they post them for sale at. They frequently reduce the price a number of times for special promotions or to get rid of excess inventory at the end of a season. So initial markup is different. Is the difference between the retail selling price originally placed on the merchandise and the cost of the merchandise, whereas the maintained markup is the actual sales that you get for the merchandise less its cost. So initial markup would be for that $40 shirt that the retailer purchased for $20, your initial markup is $20. The maintained markup would be, for instance, if the retailer sold that $40 shirt with a 10% discount, that would mean that they sold the shirt for $36. So the maintained markup is $16. So 36 minus the $20 cost of the merchandise. So the difference between initial markup and maintained markup is due to various reductions, like I said, the 10% sale, so markdowns, discounts, inventory shrinkages, which comes from things like shoplifting, breakage, loss of merchandise. So initial markup needs to be high enough so that after reductions are taken out, there is still some maintained markup left. Okay, so again, this is just a graphic that kind of shows the difference between your initial retail price, the cost of the merchandise, the reductions, and what your maintained markup is. So a lot of times retailers will use a break-even analysis to set their prices. A break-even analysis determines how much merchandise is required to be sold in order to achieve a break-even or zero profit at various sales levels. So this is an equation that I want you guys to know. The break-even point quantity is equal to your fixed costs divided by your average unit sales minus your unit variable costs. So I want you guys to be able to calculate break-even because it's really important, especially if you're putting a new product on the market, to know how much you need to sell that product for in order to just break even, so not make any profit at all. After that, you can figure out how much you need to sell the product for in order to make an actual profit. So the break-even point, or the BEP, is the quantity at which the total revenues are equal to the total cost and beyond which profit occurs. So again, the BEP quantity is the fixed costs divided by your actual unit sales price minus the unit variable cost. The retailer can choose the profit which they want to make and calculate the quantity by adding the profit to the numerator and getting the BEP quantity by calculating the fixed cost plus profit divided by the unit price minus the unit variable cost. To convert the break-even quantity to break-even sales dollars, you need to multiply the break-even quantity by the selling price. So this is a little bit easier when you have those calculations right in front of you. But it's just important to know that that break-even price is that point at which everything past that is profit. The retailer can also calculate how much sales would have to increase to profit from a price cut. A relatively new approach to setting retail prices takes a more comprehensive approach by using a price optimization software. These types of software programs can use a set of algorithms that analyze past and current merchandise sales, looks at prices, and estimates the relationship between prices and sales generated. And then the software determines the optimal or the most profitable initial price for the merchandise at the appropriate size and timing of the markdown. Given its cost, though, which is about $1 million or so, the software is only used currently by a very small set of the largest retail firms. So you can also set prices, or retailers can also set prices by relying on the internet and mobile and social capabilities. So the growth of the electronic channel, the popularity of social media, and the adoption of smartphones has really changed the way consumers get and use information to make purchasing decisions based on price. Today, a lot of consumers are opting into services provided by various mobile firms and their applications or digital apps. So the latest generation of price promotional offers considers the consumer's geographic location that is accessed from their phone location, and shows specialized promotions for very localized retailers. So this is the concept known as geofencing. Because of geofencing, we're basically providing consumers with coupon information or promotional information due to their specific location. The redemption of online coupons is growing at an astronomical rate. Geofencing, for you, those of you who are interested in marketing and interested in a future in marketing, geofencing can also be used to push advertisements into a specific area. So I use geofencing quite a bit. I really find it amusing to geofence things like Neyland Stadium when UT is playing, for people on their phones when it's not a very great game. So like most of the games this season, I like to push our NBA ads onto their phones while they're at UT. It just kind of makes me laugh, and actually we have some really good results with geofencing, so it's a pretty neat concept. So this is just, again, a little graphic that shows geofencing. So retailers can actually take into account where the consumers are geographically located, and they can offer them localized promotions. All right. So retailers initially set prices on the basis of merchandise cost and the desired maintained margin. So basically they look at cost, how much money they want to make, and that's where they set the price. But then we have markdowns to take into account. So markdowns can be classified as either clearance, which are markdowns to get rid of merchandise, or promotional, which are meant to generate sales. When merchandise is slow moving, obsolete at the end of its selling season, or priced higher than a competitor's products, it generally gets marked down. Markdowns are part of the cost of doing business. So retailers need to set their initial markup high enough so that after markdowns and other reductions are taken, the planned maintained markup is still achieved. Retailers employ markups to promote merchandise to increase sales, and markdown sales can generate cash flow to pay for new merchandise. Markdowns are also taken to increase customers' traffic flow. So markdowns may increase the sale of complementary products that the customer may not buy if the product that they were looking for wasn't marked down. So I don't know if this happens to any of you, but there have been times where I've walked into a store because I've known that there was a big sale going on and I wanted to check it out, and all of a sudden I notice things that are not on sale but I feel like I need to buy anyways. Happens to me more than I care to admit. But sometimes retailers will actually just mark down some of their items in order to generate traffic flow, get people into the store, get people shopping, and hopefully there are people like me who buy things that they wouldn't have purchased otherwise. Retailers have traditionally created a set of arbitrary rules for taking markdowns to dispose of the goods that they no longer want on their shelves. This rule-based approach, though, is very limiting because it doesn't really consider the demand for the merchandise at different price points or in different locations, so it produces less than optimal profits. The optimization software that we talked about a little bit earlier, the one that costs $1 million, it can be used also to indicate at what point to make markdowns and how much of a markdown should be taken at different locations. So actually a retailer who's located in different areas geographically may need to mark down their products or services in different locations at a different rate. So this kind of software works by continually updating its pricing forecast on the basis of actual sales throughout the season and then factoring in different price sensitivities. So retailers can reduce the amount of markdowns that they take by working closely with their vendors to time deliveries with demand. So if you're getting your deliveries as consumers are demanding them, then your inventory is moving quickly through the system and you don't need to take markdowns in order to get rid of excess inventory. Retail buyers can often obtain markdown money, which are funds that a vendor gives the retailer to cover lost gross margin dollars that result from markdowns or other merchandising issues. This was talked about a little bit in Chapter 9. Collaborative supply chain management systems reduce lead time for receiving your merchandise, so retailers can monitor changes in trends and customer demand more closely. So keeping your supply chain operating smoothly can actually impact your need to take markdowns. So when customers believe that a particular retailer offers them a good value, they will be a lot less likely to wait for the markdowns. An everyday low pricing strategy implies that the retailer's products are already at low prices and therefore will not be reduced any further. So retailers can use one of 6 strategies to liquidate unsold merchandise. They can sell to another retailer, they can consolidate unsold merchandise, they can sell on the internet, they can return to the vendor, they can donate to charity, or they can carry over the merchandise to next season. Selling unsold merchandise to another retailer is one option, but this approach for liquidating enables the retailers to recoup only a very small percentage of what they paid for the original merchandise. So usually retailers only recoup about 10% by selling to another retailer. Markdown merchandise can also be consolidated in a number of ways. The consolidation can either be made into one or a few of the retailer's regular locations, so they can take all of the merchandise from multiple stores and put it in one location. Or the markdown merchandise can be consolidated into another retail chain or an outlet store under the same ownership. So you could maybe take all of the leftover seasonal clothes from Old Navy, from all of the retailers, and you can put it in the Old Navy outlet and sell it at a markdown price. Or markdown merchandise can be shipped to a distribution center or a rented space such as a convention center for final sale. You can sell your merchandise on the internet, which is increasingly useful for liquidating unsold merchandise. You could return your merchandise to the vendor. Some large retailers have enough clout to negotiate an agreement that some merchandise might be able to be returned to the vendor. You can donate leftover merchandise to charity, or you can keep the merchandise and carry it over till next season if it's something that you feel like will still be trending. So there are 3 strategies that could be used to increase retail sales without resorting to price discrimination. Dynamic pricing is one of those strategies. It's also known as individualized pricing, and it refers to the process of charging different prices for goods or services based on the type of customer, the time of the day, the week, and the level of demand. This is really popular with automobile dealers, and internet dealers are starting to use this more. Ideally, retailers would maximize their profits if they charged each customer as much as the customer was willing to pay, but that's not always possible. So we've also got promotional markdowns, which is another technique for increasing sales and profits. That's when retailers employ markdowns to promote merchandise and increase sales, which also increase the traffic flow like we talked about before. The clearance markdowns for fashion merchandise in particular. We earlier discussed clearance markdowns, but focused primarily on how retailers get rid of unwanted merchandise. But for fashion merchandise, this merchandise can also be used to attract different market segments based on their degree of price sensitivity. Coupons are another way to increase sales and profits. Coupons offer a discount of the price on specific items when they're purchased at a store, but they are used because they induce customers to try products for the first time, convert first-time users to regular users, encourage large purchases, increase usage, instill loyalty, and protect market share against the competition. So a lot of times you'll get coupons for Kroger, and you might just continue to go to Kroger so that you can use your coupons versus maybe swinging into Walmart or Food Lion where you don't have coupons to use. Price bundling is the practice of offering 2 or more different products or services for sale at one price. So price bundling is used to increase both unit and dollar sales by bringing traffic into the store. And then quantity discounts or multiple unit pricing is similar to price bundling in that the lower total merchandise price increases sales, but the products and services are similar rather than different. So this strategy is actually used to increase sales volume. So McDonald's is an example of a company that uses price bundling when it combines an extra sandwich, French fries, and a soft drink and an extra value meal. So you're paying a little bit more in order to get people to purchase more of what you have that they may not have purchased otherwise. So some additional techniques. So zone pricing is the practice of charging different prices in different stores, different markets, different regions, or different zones. This practice is generally used by retailers to address different competitive situations in their various markets. Leader pricing is the practice of pricing certain items lower than normal to increase the customer's traffic flow or boost sales of complementary products. Sometimes retailers call the products that they price with leader pricing, they call them loss leaders. In a strict sense, loss leaders are sold below cost and would therefore be considered predatory pricing, which I'm going to discuss in a minute. But there's kind of some nuances that go along with leader pricing that doesn't make it completely impossible. One problem with leader pricing is, though, that it might attract shoppers referred to as cherry pickers who go from one store to another buying only items that are on special sales. So the best items for leader pricing are frequently purchased products that the retailer hopes consumers will also purchase other products while buying the loss leaders. Price lining is when retailers offer a limited number of predetermined price points within a merchandise category. And odd pricing is when it has a really long history in retailing, and that's when the retailers will use a price that ends in an odd number, like a 9. Because the merchandise had an odd price, salespeople typically had to go to the cash register in order to give the customer change, and this actually facilitated purchasing. So again, odd pricing has been in use for a long time. Although empirical studies on the outcomes of odd pricing have mixed results, many retailers just swear by odd pricing and believe that the practice can actually increase profits. One of the places that odd pricing works for me in particular is like if I'm buying coffee and the price of the coffee is like $1.96. Usually I just shell out $2 and I'm like, okay, have a good day. But they get that extra 4 cents from a lot of people, probably more than you would typically think. So by having that pricing where you don't want to have to deal with pennies or you don't have to deal with the change, I think really makes a difference. If the coffee was $1.95, I'd probably stick around and wait for the nickel. But since it's 4 pennies, my grandfather would be really upset with me, but sometimes I just don't want to wait around for the pennies. So in addition to customer price sensitivity, cost, competition, etc., retailers also need to consider the legal and ethical issues that come into play when they're setting prices. A reference point is a price against which buyers compare the actual selling price of the product. Therefore, it kind of facilitates their evaluation process. Typically, the retailer labels the reference price as the regular price or the original price. And if the reference price is bona fide, the advertisement is informative. If the reference price has been inflated or is just plain fictitious, however, the advertisement is deceptive and might cause harm to consumers. So basically, if you're looking at a TV and it's on sale for $500 and the reference price is listed at $2 million, you're like, oh my God, $500, I'm getting a great deal. Well, the $2 million is fictitious, so that's deceptive pricing. If it's on sale for $500 and it was all, and the reference price is listed at $800, that's a little bit more believable. So it's like, oh, it's $300 savings. Predatory pricing is a particular form of price discrimination where a dominant retailer sets prices below its costs to drive competitive retailers out of business. Eventually, the predator hopes to raise prices back up when the competition is eliminated and earn back enough profits to compensate for the losses. A retailer generally may sell merchandise at any price that they want to, as long as their motive isn't to eliminate competition. So you cannot conduct predatory pricing if you're trying to eliminate competition. However, it's really difficult to prove that a retailer is trying to eliminate competition. So that's kind of a sticky situation. So vendors will often encourage retailers to sell their merchandise at a very specific price. This is known as the manufacturer's suggested retail price, or the MSRP. You guys have probably seen that, especially when it comes to buying cars. So they recommend that they sell at this price in order to reduce competition among retailers, eliminate free riding, and stimulate retailers to provide complementary services. But the U.S. Supreme Court recently ruled that the ability of a vendor to require retailers to sell merchandise at MSRP should be decided on a case-by-case basis, depending on the individual circumstances. Horizontal price fixing involves agreements between retailers that are in direct competition with each other to sell at the same price. As a general rule of thumb, retailers should refrain from discussing prices with competitors, but sometimes that's not always the case. Bait and switch is a very unlawful, deceptive practice that lures customers into a store by advertising a product at a lower than normal price, which is the bait, and then once they're in the store, the retailer induces them to purchase a higher price model, which is the switch. To avoid disappointed customers and problems with the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, retailers should have sufficient quantities of their advertised items, or if they run out of stock, they should offer customers a rain check. A rain check is a promise to the customer that they can have the currently out of stock item at the advertised price when it arrives. Alright guys, so that's all that we have on pricing, all that we have on chapter 13. If you guys have any questions, I will be in my office.